Most people have learned to live as if everything depends on them, as if the right outcome is always one decision away, as if effort should guarantee results. This way of thinking didn't arrive suddenly. It was learned slowly, at work, at school, through praise and pressure. Control became the standard. If something goes wrong, it feels personal. If things don't move fast enough, anxiety fills the gap. If outcomes change, peace disappears with them. This has become normal. No one really questions it anymore. We wake up thinking about what needs to be fixed. We fall asleep replaying what should have gone differently. Not because we're weak, not because we're failing, but because we've grown used to carrying responsibility for things that were never fully ours to carry. And it feels heavy. When control becomes the center of life, tension quietly follows. Not dramatic tension, constant tension. The kind that sits in the chest during meetings. The kind that shows up as overthinking at night. At work, you do everything right. Still, outcomes shift. Deadlines change. Decisions are reversed. And frustration grows, not because of the work itself, but because effort feels betrayed. In relationships, the same pattern appears. You try to say the right thing, be supportive, be understanding, but people react in ways you didn't predict. And suddenly there's guilt, or resentment, or the quiet thought, why wasn't this enough? Even alone, control doesn't rest. You monitor your progress, your mood, your self-image. You try to manage your own thoughts like a project that's always behind schedule. And when something slips, motivation, focus, confidence, it feels like a personal failure. This habit doesn't scream, it whispers. It convinces you that peace should be earned through perfect management of life. And when life refuses to cooperate, the mind turns against itself. The Stoics noticed this pattern long ago. They saw how easily people confuse effort with control. So they drew a simple, uncomfortable line. Some things are up to you, and some things are not. Your thoughts, your judgments, your intentions, these belong to you. Outcomes do not. Other people's reactions do not. Timing does not. Chance does not. The mistake isn't caring. The mistake is attaching your inner stability to what was never fully yours. Stoicism doesn't ask you to stop acting. It asks you to stop demanding guarantees. You are responsible for how you show up, not for how the world responds. When this line is blurred, anxiety grows. When it's clear, the mind becomes quieter. Epictetus was blunt about this. He didn't speak like a philosopher protected by distance. He spoke like someone who had lost control over almost everything external. He believed freedom begins when you stop arguing with reality, not in defeat, in clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself about this constantly, not because he understood it once, but because he kept forgetting. He ruled an empire and still reminded himself that outcomes were uncertain, people unpredictable, and events indifferent to his preferences. What mattered was not winning history, but meeting each moment with integrity. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in fact, not because events are harmless, but because we add unnecessary weight by demanding they unfold our way. These weren't men chasing calm through withdrawal. They were deeply engaged with life. They simply refused to tie their inner balance to forces they couldn't command. At work, this idea changes the pressure. You prepare carefully. You speak clearly. You act with competence. Then you release the outcome, not with indifference, with realism. Success no longer defines your worth. Failure no longer attacks your identity. You did what was yours to do. The rest was never promised. In relationships, the shift is even quieter. You show up honestly. You listen. You express care without manipulation. But you stop managing reactions. You allow people to respond as they will. Not because you don't care, but because control poisons sincerity. And internally, something changes too. You stop treating your mind like a machine that should behave perfectly. Thoughts arise. Emotions pass. You respond thoughtfully. Without demanding emotional obedience, the self becomes a place of guidance, not enforcement. At some point, this idea stops being intellectual. It becomes felt. You notice how much energy was spent resisting uncertainty, how much tension came from demanding stability from unstable things. And the realization isn't dramatic, it's quiet. You were never meant to control the river, only how you row. The struggle wasn't effort, it was expectation. When that falls away, action becomes cleaner, lighter, not passive, not detached, just unburdened. Life doesn't become predictable when this is understood. It becomes honest. You stop negotiating with reality. You stop measuring your worth against outcomes. And in that space, something steady appears, not because the world softened, but because you stopped demanding that it do so. What remains is simple. You act well. You release the rest. And for the first time in a while, the mind is no longer at war with what it cannot command.